What is the mystery? What's the mystery? We're going to be talking about that. Ezekiel 37. Have you forgotten who you are? Hear that? Shalom and welcome, everyone. Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom. All right, welcome everybody back to the broadcast. Did you see the blood moon last night? I'm sure you did. One moment. There we are. You saw it? Where were you when you saw it? I tried to broadcast last night. Wow, that camera is zoomed all the way in. And I tried to broadcast from Mauna Kea, and it was a little grainy. So I wasn't able to do an efficient broadcast with you. I apologize, but I just wanted to share the experience with you. Many of you showed up and even walked outside and saw the blood moon yourself. But the question is, do you know what it means? We're going to be talking about that tonight. I think you will be surprised of what I've found. Not just me, but my son, Canaan, and my wife, Darla, last night kind of stumbled across it. She noticed that there was, something strange about the place where the moon was. So she wanted to know a little bit further. What is the constellation right there? Because there was a couple of stars that were close together. Do you guys know where? In the chat, do you know what constellation the sign appeared last night? Do you know? And furthermore, do you know what it means? We're going to be talking about that tonight. You saw we open up with Ezekiel 37 from James Block. You can get his music down in the description. There's links down below, right? I thought it was appropriate because we're going to be reading from Ezekiel 37 to set the precedence for what we're about to discuss. Can I read that for you? You guys ready? Shalom, everyone. I'm using my iPad as a monitor so I can see your chat. Let me say hello to Paula, Sherry Stridell, America Destroyed, AA, The Watcher Chronicles, James, Scott Brunel, Chris Frankenberg. Shalom, everyone. Welcome. I want to start off by reading Ezekiel 37 because this is very significant, and I think you'll see why in just a moment. Here's what it says. The hand of Yahweh was upon me and took me out by the Spirit and set me down in the midst of the valley. It was dry bones. And he made me pass among them all around. And see, there were many on the surface of the valley, and they were very dry bones. And he said to me, Son of man, would these bones live? And I say, O Master Yahweh, you know. And again he said to me, prophesy to these bones, and you shall say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith the Master Yahweh to these bones, see, I am bringing into you a spirit, and you shall live. And I shall put sinews on you, and bring flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put a skin upon you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am Yahweh. And I prophesied, and as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise, and there was a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to bone. And I looked and saw the sinews and the flesh come upon them. The skin covered them. It was reanimating, folks. And there was no spirit in them. And he said to me, prophesy to the spirit, prophesy, son of man, and you shall say to the spirit, thus saith the Master Yahuwah, come from the four winds, O spirit, and breathe on these slain, so that they shall live. And I prophesied as he commanded, and the Spirit came unto them, and they lived, and they stood upon their feet, a very great army. And he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the house of Israel. See, they say, our bones are dry, and our expectancy has perished, and we ourselves have been cut off. And let me just stop there, because this is a prophecy about Israel in diaspora, not Israel in the land right now, because that's only Judah, folks. And I'm going to show you that. There are more than one tribe. Therefore prophesy, and you shall say to them, thus saith the Master Yahuwah, see, O my people, I am opening your graves, and shall bring you up from your graves, and shall bring you to the land of Israel. What does that sound like? You know that at the coming of the Messiah, we are looking for a what? A resurrection. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah when I open your graves, O my people, to bring you up from your graves. And I shall and I shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live. Now that's just speaking about those that are passed on, right? And you shall live, and I shall settle in you your own land, and you shall settle, and you shall know that you have spoken and have done it, declares Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, take a stick for yourself and write on it. And that's where I wanted to bring you tonight, talking about the two sticks of Ezekiel, Ephraim and Judah. You ever heard about this parable? These two sticks that come together, this great mystery. Guys, back in, well, I don't want to go there yet. We'll touch on that in just a moment. The two sticks of Ephraim you can find in Ezekiel 37, verse 16, and it says, Son of man, take you a stick for yourself and write on it for Yehuda and for the children of Israel, his companions, and take another stick and write on it for Joseph and the stick of Ephraim and all of the house of Israel and his companions, and bring them together for yourself one stick, and they shall come together one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak unto you, say, Won't you show us what you mean by this? And say to them, Thus saith the Master Yahuwah, See, I am taking the stick of Joseph, which is Ephraim, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I shall give them unto him with the stick of Yehuda, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks on which you shall write shall be in the hand before their eyes. And speak to them, Thus saith the Master Yahuwah, See, I am taking the children of Israel from among the Gentiles, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around the world. And I shall bring them to their land. Now, this has not happened yet, folks. This happened to Judah. Some of Judah is back in the land. But for the most part, if there are 16 million Jews in the world, the statistics say, roughly half of those in the United States, East Coast, West Coast, and in the Midwest. There's some still not in the land. You see what I'm saying? But he said he's going to gather from all around the world. You see that? Because they're still in diaspora. For 2,730 years was the curse. I shall bring them into their land. Verse 22, And I shall make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one sovereign to be over them all, and let them no longer be two nations. They're talking about Judah and Ephraim, Judah and Israel. They are split, folks. The sticks were two, and now they're becoming one. You understand? And no longer shall defile themselves with their idols. And that's why they were cast out in the first place. Now, who is Ephraim? Now, that's a whole other teaching. It comes from Genesis 48:49, where Joseph blesses his sons. He prophesies over them of what will happen to them in the last days. And what does he do to Ephraim and Manasseh? He gives a specific prophecy about them concerning the Milah HaGoyim. And folks, Paul will tell you in Romans, this is about the grafting in of the Gentiles. The Milah HaGoyim is the fullness of the Gentiles, the fullness of the nations. I submit to you, if you would examine the United States, we are indeed a fullness of many nations. Just pointing out the obvious, right? That is why it's important to understand who the sign was for last night, folks, because when you see the map of who actually saw it, I think it will click with you on what it actually means. A little bit further, let's go. They shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, nor with the disgusting matters, nor with any of their transgressions. And I shall save them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and I shall cleanse them. And they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. While David, my servant, is sovereign over. This is Yeshua, folks. He's from Judah, from the house of David. We all know who that is. Even some Orthodox Jews know this. Ariel Cohen is one of them. And they shall have one shepherd, and walk in my right rulings, and guard my laws, and shall do them. And they shall dwell in the land which I gave to Jacob, my servant, where your fathers dwelt. And they shall dwell there, and their children, and their children's children, forever. My servant David shall be their prince forever. And I shall make one covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant with them. And I shall place them with, and increase them, and shall place my set apart place in their midst forever. My dwelling place shall be over them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And all the Gentiles shall know that I am Yahweh, setting Israel apart, when I set apart my place in their midst forever. It is prophetic, folks, of what we are seeing take place in the world. Let me give you a little screenshot of what we saw last night. Hang tight. You guys able to see this? Let me know when you can see that. This was the evening of January 20th, last night. It's just a map showing where the actual eclipse was visible. Okay? So everything in this area, very dark area, was basically, it was right over their heads. It went right over the heads of the people, maybe, further down in the horizon than others. But that's the fact. It came over. This was the focal point. And if you line that up, that's basically around Washington was the center point of... So, you're not able to see it. Hold on, let me... Why is you guys not able to see it? Oh, because I didn't transition it over. There it goes. Now you can see it. Sorry about that. There you go. Give me a thumbs up, guys, if you could see that, please. Help me out. So this is the map from last night. Still not seeing. Are you serious?
It just takes a moment to...
All right, so maybe we're like 30 seconds behind. Oh, there it is. It's coming. Here we go. All right, so this was the map from last night. And as I was saying, everything in the darker area is the focal point. So you got North America, South America, and look at this. You got Spain, Portugal, you got the UK, right? You've got Scandinavia, Iceland, Greenland. All of you guys were able to see that. Why is that significant? Because if you understand the prophecy of Jacob in Genesis and understand the scattering of Israel all around the world, not just in one area, folks. All of Israel didn't go to, some obscure place in the four corners of the earth and just hide out, as tribes. They assimilated. They broke off into families. They became lords. They became kings. They became nations, just like was prophesied. I will make you many nations. That's what happened. And so this is where we were last night. And I know for a fact we could see that blood moon very clearly. It was lower in the horizon. And I'm told further behind us. So every one of these places here, we could still see in some form or another, whether it be very faint or lower in the horizon, the eclipse. And it's as well over on the other side. And if you go over to Jerusalem, guys, they got a really good sun setting, moon setting, sun rising, moon setting, blood moon. They could see it from Jerusalem. So look at the span of area the Father was speaking to. And we know this for fact. Basically, from Genesis, we know that from the Maseroth, hold on, you're looking at the wrong one. Looking at the Maseroth, and the reason that the sun, moon, and stars are created, and it says, let there be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, divide the day from night, and let them be for signs. Folks, that's H226 if you want to go see that. It is a sign. So it's not, I saw someone post today on Facebook saying it's fear-mongering, talking about blood moons. implying that, you know, blood, I don't know what they're implying. It's something fearful about it. It's not that at all. Wisdom is an understanding how the Father is communicating with you. And if he tells you in Genesis that I'm going to communicate with you, let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. He's getting us in sync. That's why he created it. This cosmic clock is also telling us something. If you look at the Maseroth, it's telling a story in the heavens. Now, Yeshua told us that at the end of time, there will be a sign in the sky. And he called it the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. The Greek word translated for heaven here is used for abode of Elohim and the celestial firmament. Right? So even in Matthew, we're told that there's signs. Right? Now, the Greeks called it the zodiac. But in Hebrew, we're talking about the Maseroth. It's a completely different model. It's based off the brothers, the 12 tribes, and the two brothers, Ephraim and Menashe, the sons of Joseph. They're all there. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Maseroth. Just a little disclaimer for some of you that get a little upset about looking at things like the stars, as if, you know, we're prognosticating from them, which is forbidden, by the way. That would be forbidden. Astrology is forbidden. But understanding what is being shown to us is not. As a matter of fact, it's a mandate from the scriptures say, you need to understand these things. There are going to be signs. Here's what they mean. All right? So with that being said, let's talk about that. So we're going to be talking about the heavenly banner from the Abrahamic covenant in the zodiac. All right? And here's what we saw last night. Now, if you didn't figure it out already, the sign happened in Gemini. The twins. Who are the twins? You guys know who the twins are? Oh. It's Judah and Ephraim. Remember Judah and Ephraim? We're talking about that in Ezekiel 37, the two sticks. Now, this, if we're talking about, if you're talking Greek and you're talking about, I think it's Pollux and Castor, we're not talking about Castor and Pollux. We're talking about the Hebrew Maseroth. So these two represent Judah and Ephraim, but they also represent Adam and Eve. They also represent the bride and the groom, folks. And I'm going to show you that. So we need to understand exactly what's going on. The twins, Judah and Ephraim, is a constellation that sits on the ecliptic. The front twin carries a bow and an arrow with his left hand and a lyre in his right hand. The rear twin holds a club or a palm branch in his right hand. And that is two of the symbols of America that's being held in the eagle's hand, which is arrows and the palm branch. All right? The place of him who comes. It means united. It means twinned. Now, I thought that this was going to be Ephraim and Menashe because they are twins. One was older than the other. It's just like Jacob and Esau, fraternal twins. The front twin represents Judah, who carries the lyre and the bow and arrow, insignias of David. The rear twin is Ephraim, bearing the palm branch of praise for Messiah Yahushua, reminiscent of his welcome to Jerusalem for Passover when he died. That's John 12:13. The twins' identity is still separate and distinctive, but they are physically united and close. They have reconciled with each other, but not yet one nation. Now you see that happening now with Israel, the religious Israel, and the Ephraimites that are coming out of the Christian church. Come out of her, my people. Who? Who is his people? It's Ephraim. Ephraim is the fullness of the Gentiles, folks. And we've done teachings on that. I've proved that over and over with Scripture that the church, that Ephraim is indeed hidden in the church. So there is a reconciling that comes from this, with each one but not yet one nation, and still under dominion of, sorry about that, ruler of the earth, waiting on their Messiah, who dwells in one with them in spirit. The sign reflects the emerging status of Jacob's household. In 2011, the conditions that were kept true Ephraim and Judah apart from almost 3 millennia were dissolving, meaning that the curse that was pronounced in Ezekiel 4 was over, folks. And that's why for the past 10 years there's been people waking up, the Great Awakening. Ephraim is waking up from his time of living as a Gentile and returning to the Torah of Moses. Judah is in a state of Israel and can no longer rely on his military strength or oral Torah. Why? Because most of them are atheists that are in Israel ruling the nation right now. His safety is to call upon the only name in heaven and the earth by which they can be saved. That's Acts 2:21. There's scriptural proof that in the days of punishment of Ephraim and Judah are over. Ezekiel was given a term of punishment for each house. The failure to repent was sevenfold term. Deuteronomy 26:4. Ezekiel 4. That is where he pronounces it. So 2,730 years was the curse. Incidentally, that's 2009 is when that was over. Judah was sentenced to 360 days, 390 plus 40 minus 70 multiplied by 7 amounts is 2,520 years. This sentence began in 516 BC, 70 years after the destruction of the temple ended in 205 CE. Ephraim was sentenced to 390 days, multiplying by 7 times is 2,730 years. The sentence began in 721 BCE and ended in 2009. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the waterless pit. Returning your stronghold, O prisoner of hope, today I declare that I will restore you to double. For I have bent Judah as my bow, and I have made Ephraim its arrow. And I will stir up the sons of Zion against the sons of Greece, and I will wield you like a warrior's sword. And this is a end-time prophecy from Zechariah. The day is coming when Ephraim and Judah will no longer be separate households. This is prophetic, folks. This is why Jews are looking, and Christians that are in the awake category, are looking for this third temple. And that is why it's prophetically significant with the president we have, because he is a Zionist. He is a Zionist. There's no question about that. He is ruled by the Rothschilds, who are Zionists. They want this third temple. He is surrounded by Zionists, even in his own family, married in by the Kushners. Folks, he is neck deep in Zionism. So he is being used, the Father has declared this, as his vessel to what? To accomplish his will. And that is prophetic. He's telling you in his scripture what he's going to do. And you're seeing this take place. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're paying attention to Q and you don't have a clue of what's going on. Let's continue. All right, so looking at Canis Minor, the small dog, Yahushua the Redeemer, which is, what is this, right below? Or is in the same area, Darla? I'm not quite sure on this. I'm not skilled in this Maseroth. I'm looking at the next one you gave me, which is about Canis Major.
Canis Major was also right there, part of that square.
So it's a part of the square of it would have been right of the moon last night. I'm trying to figure out the significance of this. So the small dog is situated near the twins and below the ecliptic, close to its heels and its forked tongue of the snake Hydra approaching from behind. Older zodiacs depict a human figure rather than a dog, and with the head of a hawk and a tail. The hawk is a natural enemy of snakes. Okay, so it's a continuing story in the stars. The constellation identifies Yehoshua, son of man, in his heavenly intercessory role as prince between his two appearances, the first and the 21st centuries. The designation chief of the left hand is complementary of his designation chief of the right hand in Canis Major. Throughout these 2,000 years, he has remained close to the twins, Judah and Ephraim, interceding for them, and he will bring the covenant to completion in them. Acts 5:31 and Philippians 1:6. Right? A large dog sits on even further below the ecliptic, adjacent to Argo, the ship. Older zodiacs depict a hawk and a wolf rather than a dog. Sirius is the brightest star in heavens and found in this month. Name, coming quickly down, the prince. The stars, Sirius, the prince, ruler, the bright and shining, the glorious, the one who shall come, chief of the right hand, the prince, the mighty, the leader, the chief. Canis Major identifies Yahushua as the son of Yehova, the prince of who currently sits at the right hand of Yehova, and he will come in splendor, and he redeemed his people in the day of the great heat or pressure, and that's what is going, the great and terrible day. This could occur at Shavuot, near the beginning of time, near the beginning of time of tribulation for the world, but at a time of safety for Zion in the wilderness of the nations. The ancients always associated Sirius with the great heat. It was 22 times the luminosity of the sun. 22 is a number associated with Messiah himself. Incidentally, Darla discovered there will not be another blood moon for another 22 months. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. 22 is the number associated with the Messiah himself, since he is the word of Yehovah, and the Aleph Tav, which altogether comprises of 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Here he was unmistakably the word Yehovah. Out of his mouth will come the sword of truth of the word of Yehovah. Zion will be tested by the word in the wilderness of Basra to determine her righteousness. She will drink of the cup of the woman suspected of adultery. And that's in Numbers 5:11 and Ephesians 6:17. And then on to the next graphic. The heavenly union. All right. The sign of Gemini. We have here two youthful looking and most beautiful figures peacefully sitting together with their feet resting on the Milky Way. Their heads leaned against each other in a loving attitude. We're talking about the twins now. They can also be the Adam and Eve, or it could be the husband and wife. The one holds a great club in his right hand, and in his left hand is clasped around the body of his companion. The other holds the harp in one hand and the bow and arrow in the other. Both the club and the bow and arrow are in repose and in the same as the figures which hold them. The club, unlifted, lies against the shoulder of one, and the bow, unstrung, rests in the hand of the other. The picture looks like a readiness for warlike action, but in the same time a joyful repose and a great victory already gained. It is significantly portrays, it is set forth in the text and in many places in scriptures. So in other words, it is also looked at as something dealing with war, but in the celebratory sense. This is what we're talking about. It is an unstrung bow, arrow in one hand. It's implying we're not at a readiness of war, or we're not ready to fight, right? And that could be said about America right now, because China and Russia have outdone us in war technology. We're essentially like this right now. We have a bow and arrow that's ineffective because it's not strung. It's not at the ready. It would take a moment for him to string this and then, get his arrow up to fire before he could, attack his enemy. So he has an extra process in stringing his bow. It is not at the ready. Do you understand? He has the lyre or the harp in one hand, and also the staff is at what I would think in the military equivalent would be, help me out in the chat, guys. when you got your rifle at shoulder arms. Excuse me. It was drawing a blank there. My drill instructor would kill me. Shoulder arms. In the military, when you have your weapon at the shoulder and it is not at the ready. Okay? So this was the sign last night where the moon was. And here's the two stars, also known as Hercules and Apollo, or Castor and Pollux. But for the sake of the Maseroth, we're talking about the twins, Judah and Ephraim. Do you understand? So going back to the map, if we're talking about Judah and Ephraim, and Judah can see this, we also have Judah in the west coast and east coast of the United States, as well as Ephraim, which is the fullness of those nations, which means all of the tribes are comprised in all of this area. They're scattered all over and further out, all down into Africa. They're everywhere. That's why the scripture says four corners of the earth, folks. They're scattered. And they're in the hundreds of billions, by the way. All right, so going a little further, such are the mythic representations as they come through the Greeks and Romans and other showings. However, these two figures are not of one sex. In the zodiac of Dendra, the figure is that of a man walking hand in hand with a woman. This is the Adam and Eve picture, folks, or the bridegroom and bride picture for those that are waiting on rapture. Here's your sign, guys. The same are sometimes called Adam and Eve, but the male figure is not the literal first Adam, but the mystic second Adam, which is Yeshua, the same seed of the woman who everywhere appears in the celestial frescoes. The figure in which Egyptian sphere has appendage, which signifies the coming one, the Prince Messiah. And having identified the masculine figure, there can be no difficulty in identifying the accompanying female figure. The Lamb has a bride, a wife, the bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, and destined for an everlasting union with him in glory and dominion. And this Eve, made out of his side in the deep sleep of his death, to which he submitted for the purpose, is none other than the church, which here appears in celestial union with her sublime Lord. Even the word Gemini in the original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Syriac, whence it has come, does not run so much on the idea of two brought forth of the same birth, as upon the idea of something completed, as a year come full, or as a long betrothal brought to its consummation in perfection in marriage. And on that note, talking about the completion of something, that blood moon came on the anniversary of the inauguration of Trump. Incidentally, Trump was also born on a blood moon. That is significant, folks. And then finally, and when we closely examine the names still remain in the constellation, we find ample indication that these figures were meant to set forth Christ and his church, in that the great marriage union which is to be completed in the heaven during that very judgment period, to which these last four signs refer. In the left foot of the southern figure of Gemini shines the conspicuous star named Al-Hannah, the hurt, the wounded. This figure then must refer to him whose heel was to be bruised. So the principal star in his head is called Pollux, the ruler, the judge, and sometimes Hercules or Hercules, the mighty sufferer and toiler, who frees the world of all otherwise unmanageable powers of evil. In the center of his body is another bright star called Wasat, which means set, sealed, or put in place, where it is said, I am set on the throne of Israel, and these are set thrones of judgment. The judgment was set. Do you see the connection to judgment moon? The judgment was set. I am set in my ward, which is specifically describes what is prophesied of Christ in connection with his completion of his marriage with his church, or his congregation. I hate using that word. And in perfect accord with these indications, the figure holds with his right hand the great club of power, or the rod, right? He comes with a rod, as one who bruises the serpent's head and breaks into pieces all the antagonisms, his rule and his people's peace. The Egyptians called him Hor, or Horus, the coming one, the son of light, the slayer of the serpent, the recoverer of dominion. Horus is described as an extant Egyptian hymn, as the son of the sun, the mighty, the great avenger, the observer of justice, the golden hawk coming from chastisement. And that's why it's sometimes seen with a hawk there. Anyway, enough of that. So, what do we glean from that? What can we glean from that? Anyone? You still with me?
30 seconds behind you.
Darla has to remind me you're 30 seconds behind me. So, in a nutshell, we're talking about Ephraim and Judah. In other words, the United States and Judah. That is where the sign was over in the sign Gemini, or the twins, which is also Ephraim and Judah. And like I showed you in Ezekiel 37 and several other places you can find, folks, about these two. I think in Psalm 80 talks about Ephraim, Manasseh, and Judah stirring, or is it Benjamin stirring? Come save us. So it's prophetic. And if you're not paying attention to the Bible, then you don't know. And that's completely opposite of what Mark Taylor told you. If you weren't paying attention to Q, you don't know. I disagree with that. I think if you know your Bible, if you know prophecy, you know these things. It's not hard to figure out. It's actually pretty fun to figure out. Huh? So I'm thankful you guys joined us last night and to this evening to talk about what it's been all about. Pretty amazing that, you know, exactly on the night of the time of his inauguration, the anniversary, and we're in the midst of this great divide in this nation, right? This lame duck section. I just posted a video yesterday of George Soros congratulating the Trump campaign and the Trump administration of being able to dodge all the trouble and not get impeached and stay in there. But he made another statement about 2020 may not be good for him. He may not even make it, he says, to 2020. I thought that was pretty interesting. So we need to understand the actual puppet masters of the deep state. It's not the Obamas. It's not the Obamas. It's not the Clintons, guys. As dirty and as much as you don't want to believe that, it's actually even higher than that. We're talking about the Soroses, which is the far leftist control, and the Rothschilds, which is the far rightist control, which are Zionist, right? That's who backed Trump. It is. It's true. And who was obviously backing Hillary was George Soros. He's not going to go away either. I would submit that Trump's probably going to have a problem in 2020, especially the longer he allows this shutdown to go on and the more people that it affects. Because it's not just affecting, folks, do you actually think the 800,000 that are out of work and are losing money, and those that it affects are only Democrats? No. A lot of them are going to be Republicans, and they're going to remember this come election day. Now, some may stick around to show solidarity, right? Because they just can't fathom or even, put up with anything else. And they deal with it by just voting. But then there'll be some that vote third party. And this will cause a problem from Donald Trump because we don't need a third party if you don't want interference in this, right? So they'll split the vote. It's not going to be good. He's definitely not a shoo-in. I think it will absolutely be a harder run at it this time. Again, the longer he allows this to go on and to be an issue and allow people to be hurt, they will remember when it comes time to vote. What's going on in the chat? Sometimes I don't look at I'm having to look at an iPad because my monitor's not on. It's very small. We got any questions? Anything anyone wants to add? Something I might have missed? Did anybody else discover that this was happening in Gemini last night? And incidentally, if you go back on Stellarium to 9/11, when 9/11 happened, guess where the sun was the moment all of that was going down? Also in Gemini, the twins. The twin towers fell. So twins fell. And what did they become? One stick. The two became one. I wanted to point that out as well. In the sign Gemini, Ezekiel 37 says, the two sticks become one. Whoever you want to say, it was a lot of conspiracy on that day. The fact is, they made those buildings come down and they put one up. The two sticks became one. Prophetic, coincidence, in the sign, it could all be coincidence, yeah. But I don't think so. I don't think so. The two sticks became one. All of that is, Isaiah 9. And I think it's 33, where in that day when the towers fell, I will blot out the light of the sun. And I think the ash cloud did that for several days. And it said it right there in the Bible. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't read it. I find that fascinating that people will believe anonymous sources on the internet for just about anything, but you show them absolute empirical proof of Bible prophecy fulfilling right in front of your face, and it's like, whoo, and it's like, what?
You've got a question.
What's the question?
Who are the real Jews of the Bible?
Who are the real Jews of the Bible? Judah? We're talking about Judah, just one tribe? Or are you talking about Judah as Israel, the whole sum of all people in Israel, which is a misnomer? That is one tribe, okay? Judah was only exiled from the land. They were not cast out of the land like the northern tribes. We have to be clear about that. And the way we know this is what happened in Babylon. Daniel records this. We know that there's some that returned because it is recorded in the scriptures. Ezra, Nehemiah, they came back and they rebuild. Some did stay in Babylon, but most went back home. The reason we know this is true is because Yeshua, being from the tribe of Judah, died in Jerusalem after the exile. So that means he was in the land. Judah was back in the land at the time of Yeshua. Now the question remains, did they remain in the land? After Titus comes in and wipes them out, some did leave. Some went with Israel into the Asia Minor, into the Caucasus and other places. But guess what? Some stayed. The Father always leaves a remnant. Always will be evidence of the people. The problem was that Arabs and other nations came in and filled the vacuum that it left. But the fact is, there has always been Jews in the land. Even in the time of the exile, not all went into exile. The fact is that Jeremiah stayed behind. He didn't go into exile. He stayed in the land. There was still a remnant, folks. You can prove it all day long. There was a remnant. Now, some went into Europe, some went into the Caucasus, and there are some that grafted into Judah. For instance, the Khazars. I hear Tex Mars and many people talking about the Jews are the Khazars. No, they're not. The Khazars grafted into the tribe Judah. Not all of Judah is Khazar. Only a sect of Judah is Khazar. So you quit spreading that false information around. You don't know what you're talking about. In the Caucasus and in other places, there was those that grafted into Judaism and became Jews. That doesn't make the total sum of all Jews Khazars. That's ignorant. The fact is, there were Eastern European Jews, there were Western European Jews, there were Indian Jews, there were African Jews. Evidence is in Ethiopia. Folks, the Jews were everywhere. They didn't just go to one place. They didn't all die in the Holocaust. Many did, but not all of them. There were some Benjamites in there and probably some other tribes as with them that identified as Jews. You can't get around the math, folks. When you go to Nehemiah and Ezra and you crunch those numbers, which is about 7 million Israelis from the northern tribes went into diaspora. The mathematical exponential growth of that many people based on reproduction and the number of children that families had, which were in the dozens, it's astronomical. You can't get around it. It's in hundreds of billions of people. It's basically taking a clear glass of ice water, dropping 10 dots of blue dye into it, and giving it a stir. That stir represents the diaspora. It eventually circumnavigates that whole vessel, and all becomes blue. That's a representation of what grafting in the world was. It touched every bloodline, every shape, every color, from the most Asian of Asians to the whitest of Scandinavians, and everything in between, period. Prove me wrong. I can show you evidence, empirical evidence, mathematical evidence. We may not be able to prove it by DNA, but you can prove it in other ways, folks. Trust me. You are not lost. When you say lost tribes of Israel, you are not lost. He knows exactly where you are. And you know who you are because why? He wrote it on your heart. Isn't that what it says in the scriptures? What? And the world will know that they are mine. How? Because of what? Anyone know? The Shabbat. This is how they'll know.
Oh, and Identity Crisis is a video to see.
If you don't know Identity Crisis, we have it as a play list. Go and watch that. You can find out who you are, who Ephraim is. We won't get into the mathematics on it. There's a lot of information in there. But trust me, when Jacob prophesied that Ephraim would be the Milah Hagoyim, fullness of the Gentiles, I can show you on paper what that means mathematically. It will astound you. It's overwhelming evidence. Milah Hagoyim, the fullness of Gentiles. That's what we're waiting on. That is the time when things are full. If it's a cup flowing with liquid, it's overflowing and onto the table. That's fullness that's the fullness we're talking about. It's overflowing. Milah Hagoyim in the United States is overflowing with tongues of nations, dozens, hundreds and hundreds of different skin colors and dialects and languages. You don't believe me? Go anywhere in America and compare Florida with, Georgia with New York, or New York with California, or Washington with Florida, and see the diversity there. And everything in between. Kansas, even in Kansas, you see you see Ephraim. I'm not even kidding you. It's everybody in between. The melting pot of the world. Milah Hagoyim. And it's not just a concentration of the United States. That's just a focal point, by the way. It's the four corners, because you can find Ephraim in Papua New Guinea. You can find Ephraim in Siberia. You can find Ephraim in South Africa. because the acclamation, they're moving all around the world. What? Moving to and fro, stirred all around like the blue water. It's every nation, folks. Even those that kept themselves inclusive. They may not be of the tribes, but they are of the sons of Noah. Some populations, like China, which is Ham is China. But from Shem, I can show you every nation where that is. Everywhere they went. I hope that answered your question.
So, I don't really see lost tribes. Someone's saying if it says lost tribes in the Bible, then they're lost.
Yeah. Some call it lost tribes, but I'm not saying that that's the way it's correctly in the Hebrew, because it's not lost to the Most High. It's scattered. It's scattered. I think King James may have interpreted lost like never seen again. We will never know, but that is misinformation. The fact is, he's scattered like seed in a field. Then he promises to gather again like wheat. See the agricultural idiom there? He scattered them like seed, and then he promises to gather them again like wheat. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining us in this broadcast. I wanted to follow up with you from last night. I know that it was grainy. I'll try to do better with my cameras, but it was really, we didn't plan on it until the last minute. I was like, hey, you want to go see the blood moon on the coast or up on the mountain or something? And my two older ones wanted to go up on the mountain. Never been before. So we went, and it was awesome. Very cold. It's colder than it is. I'm sweating now because it's 80 degrees, but up on the mountain, it's probably 20 or 30 up on top of the mountain. Very cold. And I think there might be some snow. So, thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something about what we saw and what it actually means. I personally believe it's a sign about Ephraim and Judah, the two sticks coming together, and as well as a warning, because it also has to do with war, folks. The bow, the club, the readiness of war. And I would submit America is not in a state of readiness right now. I am witnessing that right now. America cannot hang with Russia and China as far as technology is concerned. For the past 15 or more years, we have not been really big on military technology. China's outdone us. They've stolen from us and then built on that, first of all. And it's Russia as well. They have massive armies. They have capabilities that we can't combat. And I'm talking about hypersonic missiles. This is why they want to take it to space, by the way. That is the reason for the Space Force, is to combat hypersonic weapons with lasers and direct energy weapons. You cannot do it from the ground. You cannot defend a hypersonic weapon with a surface-to-air missile. It won't happen. There's nothing fast enough. So it has to be done from above, right? And that's where warfare will be going. Energy weapons, EMPs. You watch what I'm telling you. They're going to take it to the atmosphere above us. So anyway, if you're following Q, you probably don't know that. I hope you did wake up in this broadcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you haven't, like and share. That will help us out in the ratings. And with that, I would like to say just happy birthday to my mom and my son Casey. The 20th and the 21st are their birthdays. I love you, Mom and Casey. So with that, I'm gonna break off the broadcast and leave you for the till the next broadcast. We'll see you then, guys. Shalom. We love you.